Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Healthy Over 50 podcast. I am your host, Liliane Roux, health coach, personal trainer, and founder of Healthy Over 50. Today, I am delighted to be joined by Chris Ryan. Chris is a highly respected fitness and performance coach with an impressive track record in the health and fitness industry. He's a former Division One athlete, was named one of America's top 10 trainers, appeared on NBC Strong, and was one of the founding trainers for Mirror, now known as Lululemon Studio. Today, through his coaching platform and thriving fitness community, Chris helps busy professionals, parents, entrepreneurs build strength, improve their health, increase their energy, and create sustainable habits that support long last term performance and longevity. What I particularly appreciate about Chris' work is that he's very practical and he has a sustainable approach to health and fitness. So he helps people move beyond the quick fixes, focuses on habits, you know, good behaviors to create that lasting results that we all want. So, Chris, welcome to the podcast. I am so happy to have you. How are you?
Thank, thank you so much, Lynn. That was an amazing intro. Absolutely happy to be here today with you on your great podcast. And I love to, promote fitness across all ages, but especially I'm 46 now. I know you're in your later 40s too. And like we had talked about when we were going through the process of seeing if this would be a good fit to have a podcast together, or an episode together last week. We were talking about, it's important as you get older. And I love that you have a podcast geared at the 50 and over crowd, because I still feel like you're still young enough to make a huge impact on your overall longevity at that point in your life. And sometimes people feel like they're just going to phone it in or mail it in, if you will. And they're like, I'm not going to get stronger. I'm not going to have my shoulder mobility back. And this is just, the extra weight or whatever is just here because I'm getting older. And I think that you and I are of the like-mindedness of thinking, you want to push father time to away as long as possible. And there's actually great ways to do that that are pretty, moderate. I wouldn't say that anything's ever easy, but I don't think, life is necessarily easy either. It's not easy if you are overweight to move. It's not easy if you have lack of mobility or pain in your joints to move on a daily basis. And there's ways to combat
Yeah, like I think the way I look at things is like when there is a will, there is a way. And I believe it's never too late. It's never too late. Chris, you've worked with thousands of busy professionals.
that.
What are the biggest health mistakes you see high achieving women making after 40?
I think that, well, all right, so the biggest, there's a few, but the biggest one that I actually see is that they think that they can't make some sort of positive change in their lives. That they're just like, oh no, this is perimenopause, or this is just life after 40 or life after 50, that sort of a thing. Or I've had children, this is this the way that things are. And, the body does change. Obviously, the body changes for both men and women. And women, after childbirth, the body is going to change. And I think that's a wonderful thing for you. And I think you should embrace, motherhood and being a woman and everything that entails. But at the same time, it doesn't necessarily mean that none of us are going to turn the clock back to be 20. And I think in this day and age of the social media world that we see Instagram influencers, we're looking at the next fitness personality, and we're like, I want to look like that. Well, I hate to say it that, they're 20 or 25. Who knows if that video has been edited or doctored up by AI or back in the 80s and 90s, it was like, airbrushed in the magazines and that sort of a thing when we were growing up. And there's, the truth of the trade is like, can you be a little bit better tomorrow than you are today? And I definitely believe in that. And I think that more people, if they have that power of positive thinking of just doing base hits, they're going to, showing up, eating a little healthier, not perfect, right? Because, it's one of those things of just trying to get that base hit, if you will. And I know you're in Ireland, but like thinking of American baseball, you want to say
Yeah.
a base hit. Like if you just think of a base hit, just like doing the fundamentals of just everyday activities and that discipline that entails, you're going to accumulate a great, healthy compounding effect for years on end, decades on end. Because in your 40s and 50s, you should have many more decades ahead of yourself.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing you say, and I'm speaking like the coach that I am, is like it's never too late. What got you here, it's not what's gonna get you there. Maybe you need another system. But and be careful with social media because it's a lot of information without any context, and it's overwhelming, it's confusing, and some people are just like, this is not for me, I'm too old. So mistake is mindset and not having maybe a system in place, right?
100%. Yeah, 100%. Because if you can just have a way that you have a game plan set up to where you want to think about, I always say this, like, don't look at things on a daily basis as much as you want to look at them on a weekly or monthly basis. Because any day can really blow up. If you have children, a kid could be sick, you got to take them to school, or you have a work assignment, you have work travel. Just life happens, right? Business happens. You're very busy in your life in your 40s and your 50s. You're in your prime earning years. You also might be caring for your older parents. You might have, dealing with all those issues that happen as our own parents get older, because we're at that kind of sticking point of where our parents might be in their 70s, 80s, 90s, depending on when they had us, right? And then on the flip side, you may be a parent and you might be caring for your own kids, or they might be going through the teenage years that are always harder, and then you might be going through like the midpoint of your career transitions that happen in your 40s or 50s as well. And so there's a lot going on in your life, and to think that you can just hopefully be your best self that you can for your own self, because at the end of the day, if you don't have your own health and wellness, you are not going to be showing up to your full capacity for anyone in your life. And I truly mean that. Like you think you might be the best parent or the best spouse or the best coworker or business owner and that sort of a thing and leader. But if you're not honed in on your own health and fitness, there's no way that you're at 100% of what you actually think you are.
Yeah, and actually we are in a culture of like in the Western world where it's all about pushing, pushing through. And I worked 20 years in tech, so it was all about, hey, reach your targets and even more. And if you reach your target, they increase your target. So many
Yeah.
high achieving women build their success, pushing through challenges. And a lot of the time, we kind of think the mindset at work is the mindset when you exercise, and it's just like pushing through. Um, but what really, at what point does that mindset, does it stop serving women physically, and how can they learn the difference between discipline and depletion? Because we see a lot of
Yeah.
depletion, we see burnouts.
hmm
What is your take on
I
that?
think I think that that's an awesome question, and I love how you stated that discipline versus depletion, because sometimes people think that, okay, I'm going to show up at my 6 a.m. workout or my 7 p.m. workout or noon workout, whatever it might be. I love when I see disciplined people and the people that just get it done no matter what. But at some point, you got to think about your overall health and well-being. Some of the things that I've looked at as an athlete in my own life, and that athletes in general, and you want to think of yourself more as an athlete, not just a person. And you want to think, because everyone really truly is an athlete. And if you take that more athletic mindset, you understand it's more training and it's more of something that you get to do to be your best self. And you're kind of like trying to think it rather than, oh, I'm just a regular everyday person that's just like lose 5 pounds or gain, some muscle and that sort of a thing. And look at your sleep patterns. So are you waking up feeling refreshed? You
Mm.
know, are you waking up and, for lack of a better term, is your urine really yellow, right? Like if it's like a really deep yellow, maybe you're lack of hydration, lack of sleep. If you wake up feeling like super duper hungry, did you have enough calories or enough protein throughout throughout the day before? And those are all like variables to me that says you might be overtrained. you know, checking out, the color of your urine, it should be a light yellow until, nearly clear, not fully clear, but like nearly clear. And sometimes if you're like, oh my goodness, I just haven't drank enough water. Well, your body's mainly water, so you need to make sure you're drinking enough water
Mm.
each day. And there's so many trackers, or you could just have a big water bottle, and it's like a liter of water. I need to have, like before noon, I need to have like a couple of those, or whatever it might be. And you're
Yeah.
generally going to feel more better about, the way that you operate your daily life. But also too, like giving yourself a bedtime to go to bed at night, so you can wake up in the morning feeling refreshed. Like, don't doom scroll on your phone at night. Try not to like watch electronics and TV shows late into the night. Like, if you get up at 6 a.m. or 6:30 or 7 a.m., you generally should be trying to go to bed by like 9:30. Like dim the lights, read a book for 20-30 minutes, that sort of a thing. 10. Don't watch a Netflix and chill show until
Yeah.
11:30 and get drawn into that electronic gizmo of like watching a screen, and like the bad, the blue light that comes out of there and everything else that like really messes with your circadian rhythms as well. And also another one that's really big is alcohol. Alcohol really causes a deep, um, a hindrance into your overall circadian rhythms of getting in that deep sleep. And sometimes people will be like, "Oh, it helps me go to sleep." Well, yes, up to a point, alcohol could help you go to sleep, but it doesn't help you stay asleep for that deep sleep that is necessary to actually cause. They've done so many studies on this. Even one glass of red wine, or one beer, or one liquor drink can really cause a lot of strife within your own sleep patterns. And sleep is, if there's one thing to really guard in your life, it's sleep, because that is when you repair your body from physical as well as mental activity. And so, a lot of in our day and age, a lot of the white collar jobs, if you will, like you used to be in tech sales, they're very much more service oriented driven, where you're constantly thinking, and this is the business up here, right? Where you can't turn it off. It's not like our grandparents' generation, if they worked in manufacturing, they punched a time card, they went to the mill, and then they did their physical duties, and then they punched their time card out, 70 years ago, and then they left and went home, and that was all they had to do. Like, they didn't think about it till 6 a.m. the next day, right? But
Yeah.
at 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock in the afternoon, they were done. Like, they were done. Whereas now we have the ability for Zoom meetings and emails and Slack channels and whatever else is out there, that all of a sudden you're like, oh, at 10 o'clock, I got to be on, at 10 p.m. or whatever. And so I deal a lot with very high end, like law partners and finance people, a lot of women, like
Mhm.
we spoke about. I attended, it's almost 50-50, but it's more about 60-40 women and men that I train, and also on the app themselves. And I actually love that. I just think it's so fun to see women strength training and being their best selves, and to see the positive aspects of being coached and what that entails for themselves. It's just really cool to see. And I think it's also very empowering for women too, to build muscle a little bit, not to look like, like jacked or whatever, but to like actually have toned arms, and like their butts lifted up higher, and their spine, they have better posture, so they're able to carry themselves in the room more, because they have stronger glutes and their hamstrings are looser, so they feel a little bit more athletic in their 40s and 50s. And their shoulders, they can wear the sleeveless blouse, and they feel, they feel sexier, they feel strong, and both of those adjectives too go together. And I just feel like that's an awesome feeling for a woman to have. Same way, like a guy, you want to have your shoulders pulled back, and like, you want to feel proud about your presence in a room, especially as you get higher up the food chain in the business world as well.
Yeah, 1000%. Like there when you were speaking, I was like, he's talking about my old self, like the person who could
Mm-hmm.
not just stop checking the emails and the thoughts, even over the weekend about the Monday, what I had to do. And so that sounds very familiar. I think what you said is super interesting because at the end of the day, it's about like resilience. When is
Mm-hmm.
resilience becoming toxic? And toxic resilience is when you have that stress. Stress happens between your two ears, but that affects your whole body, your hormones, your digestion. That affects so many aspects of your life. So what I see with my clients is usually I meet them where they are, and what we say is we define the parameters of balance. The body is trying to heal, And where do we get that homeostasis? What is your homeostasis? And you mentioned sleep. It's maybe when I go to bed at 10, that I'm deep asleep by 11, and I get my best recovery. So in the morning when I wake up, I feel like I'm refreshed. So yeah, maybe being able to identify what are the good parameters that we
Mhm.
want to be in between, like the sleep. Okay, what do I need? The food, etc. And another thing based on what you said that spoke to me a lot was listening to our own bodies, because the body is sending us messages. But when we are so stressed, and I was there, a part of us is like the brain seems to be disconnected from the body, and we don't hear the message, we don't see them. That can be a backache, that can be so many
Mhm.
things. And going back to the point that you made about the confidence from doing resistance training, strengthening your body so that your body is supporting you even when you're going through a hard time. And yeah, so that is super wonderful. What's one health or fitness belief that successful women need to unlearn after 40? And I think you've mentioned one. Uh, if they want to stay strong, independent
Mhm.
in their 60s, 70s, and beyond. I have one in mind. I'm just curious to see what you're going to say on that one. There are a few, but yeah.
Uh, yeah, I don't want to be as general as saying, strength training, right? But I do think strength training paramount to success and moving the body properly and doing a progressive overload program of some sort where, oh, I start out with 5 pounds. And it's not to say that you're going to go up in perpetuity, right, in strength training, because at some point you're going to peak out. But at some point you're going to find that natural equilibrium where you're just going to be like, okay, this is my homeostasis, and I'm going to stay right around this point. And what happens is you actually feel like, oh, I need to do my heavy squats this week or whatever. And if I don't do that, I don't feel good, right? And I'm there. All my clients are there at that point. But I do think also women need to understand a little bit more higher protein intake as they get into their 40s, 50s, and beyond. And that was the major point that I wanted to say, that a lot of women don't necessarily think about that. They think that I need to eat, a balanced diet and that sort of a thing. And that's up to a point. But if they could just eat a slight amount more protein, or even like a low sugar, no sugar protein supplement shake that's like a 25 or 30 gram shake. I personally like the ready to go ones that are just like in the little bottle that you can just throw in your bag or your purse and have it in your morning commute without even, or your afternoon commute or your afternoon snack at 3 o'clock in the office, where instead of grabbing something that's unhealthy, there's like cookies or chips there that are
Mm.
very easy to snack on. And I'm definitely one of those people that if there's bad food lying around, I'm guilty of it. I'll eat like of those mini cookies or a muffin or whatever, just because it's there. But if it's not there, and I have another option of like something that's like help satiate my appetite, like an apple and a protein shake, that makes me feel good, and it feels clean. Like you feel clean inside versus like you're kind of lethargic because you had something that was like salty or sugary, and you're just kind of like, oh, I just don't feel good after like 20 minutes after I ate that, right? And so for me, the upping the protein intake is so paramount for women, especially as they get into their 40s compared to what they used to do. And that'll help them satiate their appetite so they make less bad decisions. Not to say that you have to make perfect decisions, but less bad decisions overall will help you out tremendously. It's kind of like that 80-20 rule, if you think about it like that, where 18 out of your 21 meals a week or so are generally going to be pretty darn good. Maybe 17, maybe 19 are generally going to be really good. A couple, two or three or four, you can kind of eat whatever you want. If you're doing that 80% give or take, it doesn't have to be exactly 80%, but around that, if you're generally doing that pretty well, you're going to meet your goals for sure.
Yeah, totally. If
And what was
health,
yours?
sorry.
And what was yours? You had said you were thinking of one.
Yeah, actually, the obvious one I think is obviously protein. But in general, for me, I would say the one thing women need to understand is, and this is not coming from me. This is coming. What's her name? Stacy. I forgot her name. But she says like women are not small men. And I really
Yeah.
love that because it's like now we're starting to understand the differences, the hormonal differences. So I think to me, the mistake women make is that they want to do a lot of cardio, fast cardio, intense cardio, quickly to
Hmm.
lose the weight, and then they get frustrated because so. To me, that's the one thing I wish, but I think we need to educate women on that. And coming back to your point around social media and the fact that we're flooded with information everywhere, and when you're super busy with your job, you don't have time always to learn those things because you're really trying to learn stuff at work to be promoted.
Hmm.
So to me, this is when you and I are here to coach, but to educate as well. So that's what this is the passion, right? Help other people do better. For me, this is when the reward comes when I see the success. So
Hmm.
that would be that big cardio thing.
Hmm.
But it's changing. Women are more and more aware. Okay, if health were like if health was like an investment
Hmm.
portfolio, where should women over 50 allocate their limited time to generate the greatest return on energy,
I love
confidence?
this because I love the analogy of health and finance, personal finances that compounding because there's a lot to be said for both of those parallels of like you start investing young in your retirement funds, your IRAs or your 401ks, and
Mm.
it starts out very small. It might be just a few, few $100s out of your paycheck or whatever it might be. And it feels like nothing. And then over the course of time, it just compounds. You get a little company match, matriculates on in and that sort of thing. And all of a sudden you're 30 and then you're 40 and it starts growing and growing, growing in hopefully a positive direction, right? Which over the course of time, we know that the stock market, if you're investing in that, generally returns, a certain percentage. And through the power of compounding, those funds grow, 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 grow. And then by the time you're at retirement age, you have a lot of money, hopefully, right? And vice versa, if you didn't start early, it doesn't mean that you can't retire. It just means that you're going to have to put in more effort or more money to retire at that time period to get the same amount of money, right? So same way with fitness and health is like if you made a bunch of bad decisions in your 20s and if you smoked, you drank, you ate bacon every day, if you just did drugs, all of it, doesn't necessarily mean it doesn't necessarily mean that you can't be healthy as you get into your 30s, 40s, or 50s because you've seen it. You've seen it with people that have made very bad choices of being overweight, and then they've lost that weight, and then all of a sudden they live a healthy, long life for the longest period of time. It can be done. Or you've seen rock stars that used to drink and do drugs and all this other stuff. And Keith Richards, for God's sakes, is whatever he is, 80 plus years old, and he's still picking along. And he's a health anomaly, right? And you see these people that generally like live a long duration. Obviously, there's a lot of genetics that go along with that, but at the same time, is like they've made healthier choices as time has gone on as well. So at any point, you can like just put that demarcation line in the sand and say, "I'm going to make a healthier choice," and you can do that. But I think with women as they get a little older in their 40s or 50s, it's really about the strength training component. So if there's like one thing to take away is if you can get stronger, you will help combat your estrogen levels a little bit as they naturally increase in your 40s and 50s during the perimenopause stage, and then help increase your testosterone a little bit, which is going to help decrease the estrogen in the first place, right? So it's a nice little balance. And by all means, women should read up on it. They should talk to their own doctors on this if they have to see an endocrinologist on it. But it's actually fascinating when you understand like what that does for you from a whole health and fitness standpoint. But when you strength train, also, it helps your body find its natural equilibrium. Because I want women to understand this is that you can't out train your frame. So everyone, men and women, have a certain frame, right? We have a certain bone structure that we were given from our parents,
Mhm.
and we can't retool that in any way. Some guys are going to be a little bit more like pear shape where they're going to have wider hips and smaller shoulders, or they're going to have big, broad shoulders and a super narrow waist. And like, they look like an Adonis. Like, it's like, whoa, like look at that Greek god or whatever, and some women are just going to look a certain way versus other women. Some women are going to be more hippie. Some women are going to be more, they put on weight in their stomach or their hips or their thighs and that sort of thing. But in general, for all those people, their body will find their most efficient natural equilibrium if they do some forms of strength training several days a week. And when you train your chest and shoulders and your back and your glutes and your hamstrings and your quadriceps and your core muscles, your body is going to naturally gravitate towards its best state possible. And by best state, I mean its strongest state, its most posture effective state, its most effective, state overall for your energy levels, the way that you carry yourself, the spinal alignment in your vertebrae, so that your back doesn't go out, or your hips don't hurt. That all those things really come in alignment. And I do think that when you do that correctly, worry less about what the actual physical scale says and more about how your clothes fit, how you generally think that you look in a mirror, or how you carry yourself in a room, and that sort of a thing. Because sometimes I love these, some of the better female trainers out there actually promote this. They'll like, oh, this is me at 120 pounds, and this is me at 140 pounds. And a lot of times they look way better at 140 pounds to 99.9% of the individuals out there, where it's like they're not like the skinny fat, it's more of like the strong and toned, right? But the scale is going to say that they're 20 pounds heavier, but their clothes fit better. They
Mm-hmm.
physically look better. They have a smaller waist. They have a tighter glutes. Their butts lifted up higher, and like
Yeah.
their shoulders are pulled back. Their arms look more toned. But the scale, when they look down at it, will say that they're 140 pounds. Like, who cares what the scale says, as long as your metabolic health is, healthy,
Yeah.
like your ticker and your heart is healthy and all that, and your hormones are healthy. But in general, like, worry more about like how you physically perform on a daily basis. Are you sleeping well? Are your clothes fitting well? Are you proud of the way that you look in the mirror? Are you proud of the way that you carry yourself into a business meeting, into a room? Are you proud of the way that you can carry yourself with your family and your children, and play with them and be an athletic mom, or grandmother as you get
Mm-hmm.
older, and all that? And to me, those are the major important factors that sometimes women can sit there and say that they're very inclined to look at the scale and like, oh, I need to maintain this weight because this is what I was at 25 and it's my goal. And I'm like, well, as you get older, I had this conversation last week as why about the scale,
Mm-hmm.
and you generally like worry less about what the scale says and more about like how you physically feel and look from a muscular standpoint, right? And operate on your daily life, and they'll serve you better long term, for sure, for sure.
Yeah,
Mentally too.
1000%. No, so that is so accurate. And actually, it's funny because the people that I'm coaching, and I'm working with women that are trying to, some of them lose a lot of weight. And the first thing that I tell them, they're like, I don't really care about the scale. Let's not focus on the scale. We're going to focus on nutrition and movement. And what we do actually is we focus more on the body composition. So we want to see what's the body fat percentage, what's the muscle mass. And to me, this
Mm-hmm.
is where we see real progress. We don't really focus too much. We will eventually, but it's not the main thing. So yeah, I'm with you on that one. Definitely.
And
Um,
the cool part, when people need to understand, when you add the muscle mass, it actually burns fat. So it's a positive double-edged sword for your body, right? So sometimes people think of double-edged sword like where like you get one thing and it takes away from another. And this one is the positive aspects of the more muscle you have,
yeah.
the more calories you will naturally burn in just the state that you are in right now, sitting, just existing. We're not necessarily exercising right now, but because we do exercise, our bodies have a certain amount. That's why we're hungry, right? Like
Yeah.
that's why you have to eat protein, and you have to eat vegetables and fiber and all that other stuff and
Yeah.
healthy fats to like make sure that your body has energy, because your body's like, your muscles are like eating away at your body otherwise, right? So it's a give and take in a good healthy way. But that's when that body is at that natural homeostasis equilibrium that we were speaking on earlier, where it's just like it's a clean burning engine. And when you think of your body as an athletic, clean burning engine, it'll make much more sense to you, where you're like, I know we're beyond like, the trains with like the coal and everything, but you kind of want to think of like back 100 years ago or 150 or whatever. It
Mm.
was like, oh yeah, the person that would shovel the coal in the train, and like they wouldn't do it all day long, but they would do it like every little bit. And that's kind of like what you want to think about your body. Like, oh, I need to just put one more, little like shovelful into the engine and let it burn clean, and that sort of a thing as much as possible. And versus like throwing in something that, wood wouldn't burn as clean or as efficiently as the coal would, right? As they found out, right? So,
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's like resistance training is the multiplier. It really accelerates your results. So totally. If you're a high performing woman over 40 and you feel like you're doing everything right, but your energy is low, your body is changing, and nothing seems to work anymore, it's not a discipline problem. What most women don't realize is that after 40, your hormones, your metabolism, and your stress response all shift. So the strategies that worked before, eating less, doing more cardio, pushing through, actually start working against you. I spent over 20 years in high pressure corporate environment, and today I help women like you stabilize their energy, support their hormones, and perform at a high level without burning out. This is not about doing more. It's about doing what your body actually needs now. If you're ready to stop guessing and finally understand what works for you, click the link below and book a call. But remember, your health, your control. Now, speaking of resistance training, can you touch on, and you kind of touched on it, but anything else you want to add in terms of why it is so important for middle life and beyond, not just
yeah,
for the way we look, but why is it so important? Because a lot of the time women now know, okay, I have to go to the gym, I have to lift weight, but not everybody understand like why, and there are different reasons. So if you could touch on
yes.
them, that would be amazing.
Sure. Well, especially for women, one of the major things that pops up usually with women in general is osteoporosis, right? So women are more prone to it than men. Not that men can't get it. It's just, it's more about, once again, back to what we were talking about earlier with your frame. So your bone structure. Some women are have slight bone structure, and they tend to lose the foundation of their bone structure as they get a little older. The
Mm.
cool part with strength training is, it sounds bad, but it's actually good, is that it sets off what's called osteoblasts, where you actually end up having, you bend your bones in a way that, not to break a bone, but you strengthen them. So
Mm.
at some point in our bodies, and usually in our late 20s, early 30s, that we start to have some sort of sarcopenia or whatsoever. Like sometimes it could be in our 40s for people,
Mm.
but at some point we're going to have some sort of muscle loss that will happen. The goal is to have that muscle loss lessened as long as possible, right? So we all know that at some point, like for instance, we will die, right? Like not being like, at some point we will die. The goal is to live as long of a healthy life as possible, to be as effective and healthy as possible. Because who wants to live their last decade or two in a state of like, being like, I have a walker, my shoulders are constantly rolled forward, I can't do anything, I'm just going to doctor's appointments, and I'm subject to a slip and
That's the
fall and that sort of
reality of a
thing.
lot of people right now.
Unfortunately, it
Mm.
is. And but when you set off those osteoblasts, it technically helps strengthen the bones. So a lot of people understand that you have, when you work out, you have small micro tears. So think of your muscles as like little sheets. So like they're all like you have those micro tears that kind of pull apart, and that's the muscle soreness that happens, right? And that's why sleep and recovery and hydration is so important after a hard workout. Is that you end up getting a good night's sleep. You eat your protein to synthesize through those muscles, the muscle fibers themselves, to help them repair and get stronger and get bigger and all that other stuff, right? And then when you sleep, it helps them to repair themselves. And then what happens is then they get generally a little stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger over the course of time, and they progressive overload. So just getting a little stronger over the course of time until you hit that equilibrium, and you sustain that equilibrium as long as possible, which can be done. Proven over and over again when you see people that have worked out for decades. At some point, yes, we will die, but at some point, like the whole goal is like live like this, and just kind of like fall off a cliff at the last day of your life, hopefully, well
Mm.
into many decades ahead, versus this steep decline that a lot of people have starting in their 30s or 40s, and it just like goes down like a double black diamond ski slope, versus like a very low gradient, and then all of a sudden it just at the last day or month of your life, if you will, if you're that lucky. But in general, like when you set up those osteoblasts, that's something that is absolutely fantastically amazing on a pure science nerd level that I really feel strongly about, because then you have better posture, you're less prone to slip and falls, all of it. So if you're less prone to slip and falls, and you don't break your hip from a slip and fall, you're not going to the hospital and possibly getting an infection or another sickness or another ailment in the hospital. As you get older, you want to stay away from the hospitals as much as possible, right? In general. And I say that because my grandfather had a slip and fall when he was in his kind of early 80s, I guess, and like 81, 82. And then it was kind of like the beginning of the end because of that. He went to the hospital and got an infection, and like some months later, he passed on. And it's like my dad passed away last year at 80 years old, and he basically lived a super healthy life until he was about 79. And even with some genetic history of, he had a quadruple bypass at age 55 because of some genetics that didn't play into his life. But he also worked out his whole life. So he exercised, he strength trained, he ran sprints and everything else. And his twin brother died at 54. And he didn't. He chose another life of, smoking and that sort of thing, a more unhealthy lifestyle. But my dad chose a healthier lifestyle. So maybe my dad was supposed to die at 54, 55, right? If he was like his brother, but he chose a healthier lifestyle. So for the next, several decades of his life, he was able to generally have a really good life. You can't outplay your genetics, right? Like for instance, I unfortunately inherited. People say, "Well, Chris, you're so healthy," and I am up to a point. But I unfortunately inherited some health ailments in the cardiovascular side, and the heart side, that from him, that I have to be careful of as well. For instance, I have a very high HDL, which is good, a good healthy cholesterol, and I have very low triglycerides, and I have a zero CT score 2 times from age 40 to 46 that I just had recently done. So I'm very proud of that. And that's where you get the CAT scan of your heart in the arteries and everything else to make sure there's no plaque buildup. But my LDL is extremely high. It's embarrassingly high, and I also have the two AB proteins that are very high as well, that are totally genetically driven. And unfortunately, like there's very little that I can do with those other than take like a low grade statin to help out the LDL and or switch. I've been good about it at different points in my life of bringing the LDL down with a plant-based diet for myself. But what's interesting is I come from like you're in Ireland. I come from the Irish American background of like meat and potatoes and that sort of thing. My
Okay.
wife is Greek. My wife is Greek American, and she comes from like a vegetable, fish driven background and that sort of thing. And we've eaten the same diet for 15 years, right? Like she cooks and like eat, generally speaking, like 80, 90% of the same meals together, right? And that sort of a thing. And then hers is the exact opposite. It's like the perfect A+ scores across the LDL is lower than the HDL. The HDL is super high, and like triglycerides are next to nothing. And so like I'm there with her on 2 of the 3. But the LDL cholesterol score, for instance, I'm not, because I just inherited something from my family. You can't, your genetics are your genetics. And sometimes people are like, oh, that person exercised, and look, they died at 75. And my grandfather smoked a pack a day and drank 3 fingers of whiskey, and he'd live to be 95. Well, you know what? He probably had amazing genetics, but by and large,
Yeah.
the vast majority of the folks out there, you will live a healthier, longer, more fulfilled life if you generally eat a little healthier, if you work out and you exercise a few days a week. By no means do you have to be an Olympic level athlete. By no means do you have to be some sort of college level athlete or of some amazing physique or whatever. A lot of times the people that are just healthy have low cortisol levels. They're not stressed. You see the blue zones, right? Like
Yeah,
you know what I'm familiar with the blue zones, like
of
in
course.
Greece or in Japan. Generally speaking, none of those people. Some of those people might even be overweight by our standards of like a little belly or whatever, but they generally eat really healthy. They have extremely low cortisol stress levels, and then they walk a lot. And then they also, another thing too, is they have a sense of community, or they laugh a lot too.
Yeah.
So all those factors beyond just strength training, like I live in the New York City area, tons of stressed out folks here, right? Obviously, a lot of money, a lot of big careers, the finance media capital of the world, and in all of it, right? Just New York City is New York City. London's, another
Yeah.
major city, and Tokyo is another major city, right? Like those types of cities, you got a lot of people that work 12, 16 hours a day. Silicon Valley, you're in the tech world, so you know
Yeah,
exactly what I'm talking about.
I do. Yeah.
Where you're constantly on Slack or Zoom meetings all day long, all in the world's 24/7. So you might have meetings at 6 a.m. or 4 a.m. or 10 p.m. And like when are you going to rest? When are you going to sleep? But you got to make sure you pay yourself first in life as well. And sometimes I feel like the busier folks, the more senior folks out there, whether it's men or women, they don't make the time for themselves to pay themselves first. And I
Hmm.
think we spoke about this, the analogy of when you're on an airplane and they talk about the safety video comes on and they talk about putting your face mask on first if they lose oxygen in the airplane versus helping out even a child next to you. Because if you help out the child first, but then you lose your oxygen, then
Mm.
you're going to pass out, right? So you got to make sure that you take care of yourself first, because then you can be better to all those folks around you that you need to help out. And the same thing is in your everyday life. If you take care of yourself first from a health and a fitness standpoint, you'll be better ROI for your company. You'll be better ROI for yourself personally, on both a monetary and personal level, with your friends, your family, your spouse, your colleagues, your the people that work for you if you own your own business, whatever it might be. Like you're going to be your best self possible if you just generally take care of yourself first. And the busier people get, they tend to lose track and foresight of taking care of themselves first, because there is only 24 hours in a day. And I
Yeah.
get that. But you got to carve it out, whether it's 20 minutes or an hour, several days a week. And circling back to the beginning of this podcast is like, don't worry about a day blowing up for yourself. That happens. You're human. Worry more about like the weekly, monthly goals that you set up of saying, I just want to work out 3 days this week I need to move my body for 3 total hours this week. So whatever that is, figure that out. How can you do that? Oh, I got 20 minutes in today. I can get 40 minutes in tomorrow this time. And I met my overall 7 day goal, which will overall meet my monthly goal, which will meet my yearly goal. But
Yeah.
kind of begin with the end in mind for your goals, the same way you would on a business plan. I want my business to make $1 million or $100 million or whatever it is. Or I want to retire with $1 million, or I want to retire with 10 or 50 or
Mm.
$100 million. Well, how are you going to do that? And how many years is it going to take? And, begin with the end in mind. And all of a sudden it's easier to fill in the blanks along the way.
Yeah, 1000%. Like you touch on so many things as I was listening to you carefully. What came for me is first, like you kind of touch on the gene theory versus the terrain. And you know what they
Mm-hmm.
say? They say the gene, it's kind of the gun, but it's the terrain that pulls the trigger. So the gene load the gun,
Yes.
and that's kind of to me that's what I believe. So it's not because we have good genes that we can be like careless. Another thing, touching on having a system for busy professional. I used to work for my last company in tech was a company called Fivetran. I worked for them. I finished there as a sales manager, and I was super inspired by the CEO. His name is Jim. He's not the CEO anymore. And one day I was in San Francisco and we had like a massive company gathering, and I was jet lagged, so I went to the gym super early 5 o'clock, 5 a.m. And I was like, the CEO was there and he was always doing his thing before the beginning of his day. And for me, I was like,
Mm-hmm.
and that man was always, so for me, he had a system on top of his work system to do all the thing he was doing. You have to weave in your personal care, exercise, and health system. So that's what comes from me when I hear you say that. I think a lot of the time women we've been like chasing success and wanting to be successful, and that we forget to look out for our own bodies and self. And a lot of women, I don't have kids, have kids, so they're looking after the family, their careers, and the rest is like now it's time to bring that back and just put that in the focus, because that's going to be the foundation for the real success. And our definition of success, by the way, as you know, probably
Mm-hmm.
evolves over time. Like your success, your definition of success when you're 20, 30 is way different.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm 48, so my definition of success is now closer to happiness and being healthy. Because to me,
Hmm.
that's the real wealth. So
Hmm. Well, I think
definitely,
also too, as you get, the more successful you are, by the time you get into like your mid 40s, you've probably earned a certain amount of money, and you probably earn more money than maybe you've ever thought you could, right? At a certain point, and you realize like, okay, then I feel I need better making this money than I did 5 years ago when I was making 50% of that money, right?
Mhm.
Probably not. Like at some point, if your daily needs are met and that sort of thing, like you're like,
Yeah.
okay, like what else do I need financially, right? I know that I can still retire at 65. I just let all this money compound and that sort of a thing. But what's really going to make me wake up every day to feel fulfilled? And you're also at that point in your life where we spoke about, like, I lost my dad last year, and I thought that put a lot in perspective. Obviously, it was, I miss him dearly, but I also learned a lot as a man, as a father, as a husband, that, okay, let's say hopefully I have longer years left than just 80, right? But let's say that's all I have left. So I think it set off something in my head of like, okay, I remember my dad in 1991, because that's my age now at 46 that he was, right? And I remember him clearly in 1991. I was 11, and I'm like, okay. So from 11 to now is like when my dad, that's the remaining years that I personally might have left. So like what's going to fulfill me each day, you know? And so that's why I love promoting health and fitness, because if I could just, I know the answers, right? A lot of the answers, but a lot of people don't. So if I could help people out to find those answers themselves through my app and through podcasts like this with great people like yourself, and promoting general health and wellness and not just snake oil, then like, I feel fulfilled at the end of the day to get up and like live my years in the best way possible. And so that's what really like gets me personally going too. And I'm sure it's probably a similar path for yourself, where you had just said, like, you'd been a high level sales manager in major tech companies, and you've had stock options, and you've done really well for yourself. And you've worked in Silicon Valley, and you've seen the best of the best, maybe the worst of the worst, depending on but you chose a different career path at this point. So like, congrats on that. And I wish you all the success in the world. And
Thank you.
it's really cool that you are trying to pay it forward as much as possible for yourself, especially within a target market of the women in business in their 40s, in their 50s, that need to have some answers, right? Maybe need to have some accountability, need to have that extra coach to
Yeah.
like get them to that next level.
Actually, what I'd love to do now is maybe for you to, because obviously, when we got in touch, I looked you up online, and
Mm-hmm.
I was super impressed by your kind of your app where you have all your video, your programs. Can you, because for me, I'm a believer. I realize the more I coach people, I go to their houses and I see a lot of women that are 40, 50. They don't want to go to the gym, some of them. They really
Yeah.
don't. They don't see the gym as the place for them. And the trend is that, yeah, you have to go to the gym, you have to, there's so many trends. And some people, they just want to train at home. So could you share a bit about, what you're doing on your platform, and because I think it's super powerful.
No, for sure, for sure. Yeah, so I'm a big believer the best workout you do is the one that you actually do. So I set up something that was literally as easy as possible for people to curb excuses and just get it done. And so my app, it's kind of set up like a Netflix style catalog. It has new live workouts every week at different times. So depending on where you're at in the world, you could jump into a live workout if it's conducive for your workout schedule. And it's all defaulted to the time zone that you currently are in. And then also, there's literally hundreds of, I think like 800 plus on demand workouts that you can shoot or that you can take for any fitness level. So a beginner level class, an intermediate level class, or an advanced level class. And the advanced level classes are very advanced, and the beginner level classes, I meet you where you're at. And there's also great programs that are set up, or collections as I call them, where it's like a 25-day jumpstart collection. Let's say you never worked out, or you haven't worked out in years, and you need to just start somewhere. Like, Chris,
Yeah.
where do I start? Or Lillian, where do I start? This is like that style of program. And then there's different programs built throughout, and fun programs. Like I have like a holiday abs challenge that I always do around the end of the year for holidays, when people are, they could be traveling. They might not have access to their gym, but they could always like work on their abs, especially as they eat, and drink and have a fun time with friends and family and colleagues at the end of the year, usually celebrating, in a good way. And I'm totally for that. But sometimes people are always like, it's a kind of a tongue in cheek of like, oh, we can always work out on your abs, right? Wherever you're at, 15-minute ab workouts go a long way. And so those are always fun. So there's a whole host of different programs which are strewn throughout. But really, what it is, it's dumbbell based, band based, so like a resistance band, like the longer bands, as well as mini bands, so the little bands, and then body weight. And so I really like, of course, I have like all this equipment behind me and everything else.
Yeah.
That's personal use, and I love that stuff. But those are like the toys that I have for my own self and my family. But really, I work out 80% of my workouts are what I do on the app itself. I might do a little bit extra running or something, training for a high rocks race that I just completed in a couple weeks ago. It was my first one. And I think training for like a marathon or a high rocks or whatever it might be, some sort of competition or whatever you want to do in your life, totally cool. Maybe you're a golfer or tennis and like that's your thing too. But in general, a good amount of strength training in mobility will be paramount to success in any endeavor that you want to do.
Yeah.
Anything, right? Whether it's trying to play a sport at a high level as you get a little older, or simply just existing and trying to, live a healthy, long, fulfilled life as much as you can. But what's cool with the app is it also offers nutrition plans. So for both meat and plant-based diets, obviously I talked about the plant-based diet that, helps bring my LDL down. And so it really is all encompassing. And it's great. You have a 7-day free trial on it as well. So full 100% access, 7-day free trial for you. And I think, the world of it's got so many members from all over the world. You can download workouts and take them at the beach on vacation. I've seen people take them at the beach or like at a marina when they've been sailing around and stuff. It's just so fun to like when people tag me on social media and like with the workouts or the amount of weight that they've lost or the muscle that they've gained or both. And, they send me a little photo of them flexing or whatever it is. It's just it's so fun to say, or they had a great doctor's appointment and they did a new, program or a new, weigh in and with their body mass. And they realized that, oh, I gained this amount of muscle and the scale didn't change, but I gained all this muscle because the muscle burnt off the fat, but I lost all this fat and I gained all this muscle and that sort of a thing. And then I'm like, see, I told you, it doesn't really matter what the scale says. It's about the matter of muscle that your body has in your frame and, that sort of a thing. And generally speaking, it's just fun to see people see their best selves that sometimes they didn't think that existed within, and to surprise those individuals along the way with success. And I always tell people, I'll want it as much as you want it. And what's cool is with the app, I can train thousands of people all over the world versus just a single person by themselves. And I do have a one-to-one coaching accountability program as well that I love. I can only take on a certain amount of individuals in that program just from a whole host of like time on my end that I just can't have. But there's sometimes people will be like, they just need that extra boost or the extra accountability and that sort of a thing. And so I always have that. And that's an executive coaching platform that is on my website, chrisryanfitness.com. And you can download the Chris Ryan Fitness app, both in the Apple Store and the Google Play Store. So cover pretty much every mobile device right there. And you can scan it to a smart TV at any point very easily. My 76-year-old mother does it. And so very easily. So and I have a lot of people that are in their 70s and 80s that are on the app too. And they do all sorts of workouts as well. And sometimes they surprise themselves and they're building strength into their 60s, 70s and beyond. It's really cool to see, or sustaining their strength as much as possible. Because if not, you have no choice. Your body will atrophy at some point, if you don't strength train.
And I say people that are in their 70s, my mom is the generation that has done all Jane Fonda's workout at home. Kathy Smith, all of that. I know them because my mom was doing them. So my mom would be somebody who would love those type of workouts. Well, Chris, thank you so much. That was like a really fun conversation.
Thank you.
And I think there were so many valuable insights in this conversation. But to me, what really stands out is that when we think of high performance and good health, we don't have to have one or the other. We should have both. And
100%.
I think it's what people need if they really want to have like thriving careers, enjoy their family, their lives, their independence. And you touch on that. It's not about, it's about the health span. I don't want to live until 100 and be, I just want to be
Yeah.
healthy and have my good energy. It's physical and it's mental as well. Uh, Anything you want to add in terms of anything you want to leave the people with?
Yeah. I think that at the end of the day, if the listeners of this podcast could get anything out of this conversation that we had, I think it's consistency is important. And it's probably the most vital thing that you can do. If you're, we had talked about it early on about consistency. If you're investing into your retirement funds, right, and just paying yourself first out of your paychecks, or your consistency patterns in your own health and fitness, and you're paying yourself first. That you're making sure that you're getting your workouts done every few days, that sort of thing. You're trying to generally eat healthy. It does not mean that you have to be perfect by any means. Perfection is not anything that people should really strive for. It's not a competition to see who is the fittest out there, who lives the longest, or whatever it is, right? It's more of a competition within yourself of how fulfilled can you be on a daily basis. And generally speaking, when you are rested, when you are hydrated, when you are strong, when you have good posture, when you have a smile on your face, you are
Mm.
generally going to live a fulfilled life. And those are all things that I truly believe that exercise brings out in you. It's the foundation of everything for yourself. Your health is so important for everything that you do.
Brill, you said it so well. So, guys, that was the Healthy Over 50 podcast. Thank you so much, Chris, for being here today with us. I love the conversation. I hope we do it another time and another time.
I would love that. And I
Uh,
appreciate everything, having me on your podcast. I appreciate everything you do for the world as well. And specifically for your listeners and the women in their 40s and 50s and beyond that are, you know, working it from all different angles. They're doing a lot. And so, but at the same time, they're worth it, and they need to understand that they need to be healthy, fit for the long haul as well for themselves.
yeah, it's your health, your control. Until the next time, thank you so much. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Lillian.